In this edition of the Red and Blue Political Roundup, President Trump said Wednesday he's looking forward to the release of special counsel Robert Mueller's report. His comments come as the Russia investigation appears to be wrapping up. Mr. Trump also said when the findings are released, the public should be able to see it.
Let it come out. Let people see it. That's up to the Attorney General. We have a very good Attorney General. He's a very highly respected man. And we'll see what happens. With all of that being said, I look forward to seeing the report.
On Tuesday, the House overwhelmingly passed a bipartisan measure to do just that. The bill calls on Attorney General William Barr to release the report once the Justice Department receives it. Barr has previously said he will provide as much transparency as he can, as long as it is, quote, consistent with the law. Julia Manchester is a reporter at The Hill, and she joins me now from Washington. Julia, thanks for being with us. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham blocked a vote last week. It was on his chamber's version of the bill to publicly release the Mueller report. Do the president's recent remarks change anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the president, by saying let the public see it, is essentially trying to assure his base that he has nothing to hide, that he has done nothing wrong. I think it's also important to look at the context of the president's recent comments, and that the White House, CNN reported yesterday that the White House said they would be able to review the Mueller report before Congress was able to get it when William Barr received it. So I think it's important to look at it in that context as well. However, I think this is the president's way of trying to reassure his supporters and say, I did nothing wrong. Because I think if the president says we don't want it public, I think that makes a lot of his critics skeptical and a lot of his supporters worried.
Well, we have been gearing up for this report for months. As we get closer to its release, how are lawmakers preparing?
Well, I think on the Republican side, you're kind of seeing a bit of a mixed bag. We've seen some Republicans say that they believe it's important to be transparent in this process, that the American people deserve to see it. However, other Republicans, such as Lindsey Graham on the Senate Judiciary Committee, have not been as open to having this public release. So I think you're seeing a mixed bag and a big anxiety on the Republican side. However, on the Democratic side, I would say that they're chomping at the bit to see this report due to all of the recent investigations that have been launched into President Trump and his surrounding world and surrounding associates. In terms of whether it is made public, I think it's important to point out that Adam Schiff, House Intelligence Chairman, said last week that he would be willing to subpoena Robert Mueller if the Congress does not receive the entire report. So you're seeing different reactions from Republicans and Democrats, and even within the Republican caucus.
On another topic, during a speech in Ohio Wednesday, President Trump continued his criticism of the late Senator John McCain. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer announced he will introduce a bill to rename a Senate office building after McCain. What do we know about those efforts?
Yeah, so we know that obviously the Senate Minority Leader had a friendly rapport with John McCain. They served in the Senate for a while together. However, this is his way, I think, of jabbing at the president amid all of this, and no better way to do it than to name a building after John McCain. I think the president is someone who is used to having his name on a lot of buildings, right. So this definitely could be a bruise to his ego. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But in terms of, the president's continued criticism of John McCain, I mean, I've talked to some Republicans, and I think there's a lot of frustration as to why the president continues to go after John McCain months after he passed away. And it's not just another senator who passed away. It's someone who has a supreme, very top-notch record as a war hero. So I think a lot of Republicans are very frustrated with this. However, looking deeper, I actually think the president has some strategy in attacking John McCain in an odd sort of way. I think this is the president's way of trying to prove his dominance over the Republican Party. I think Republicans, and the president knows this, have a lot of respect for John McCain. However, the president wants to be the center of attention in his party, and this is his strategy to make sure all eyes are on him.
Meantime, CBS News learned Wednesday that former Vice President Joe Biden has started reaching out to potential donors. All signs point to him running. What kind of impact would he have in this growing field of Democrats?
Yeah, I think he would obviously add yet another option for Democratic primary voters. However, I think there is some frustration among younger Democrats and even more progressive Democrats about Biden throwing his hat in the ring. Biden is a much older man. Biden is a white man. He's been in politics in Washington, D.C. in particular for decades now. And I think there is a want among younger progressive Democrats for someone new, someone who isn't as experienced in politics or isn't as tied to the establishment. However, Joe Biden is extremely popular, and we saw that the Obama administration essentially ended on very popular terms, according to polling with the American people, and Biden can essentially ride that wave.
Well, on the other side of the aisle, the Republican National Committee announced Wednesday they raised $14.6 million in February. Why is this total significant for the 2020 efforts?
Well, it's significant because this was essentially raised in an off-election year in 2019 in February, months before, over a year before 2020 takes place. And it shows that Republicans are really preparing to take on whoever this Democratic candidate might be. And I think they're realizing, at looking at the fundraising records made by Senator Sanders or Beto O'Rourke, that they need to step up their game as well. So I think you're going to see a lot of increased fundraising records, efforts on the Republican side in the lead up to 2020.
Finally, I want to ask you about former Alaska Senator Mike Gravel. A Twitter account under his name Tuesday said the 88-year-old is considering a 2020 run. A group of college students is reportedly behind the push to get him to join the race. What do we know about him?
You know, Elaine, what's so interesting about this effort is that this group of college students probably weren't even born when he left Congress in 1981. Right. So, you know, this is someone who ran in 2008, shared a stage with Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden, and took a very anti-interventionist approach, slammed the Bush administration for getting into Iraq in 2003. So I think a lot of younger voters are looking at someone like Mr. Gravel and saying, this is someone who's been removed from U.S. politics for some time now, and he has had some maybe more progressive, unconventional approaches to politics. So why don't we try him? I mean, you know, he is older, he is white. However, I think there may be some thought among a certain group of younger voters that he could maybe be somewhat of a Bernie Sanders figure, someone who has been around in the political world for decades, however, has a very much more progressive or different approach to the Democratic politics.
Such a different set of dynamics this election cycle. Julia Manchester, thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.